Welcome to the Revenge Story Times channel. 16 years ago, I thought I'd won life's lottery. My wife, Anna, was the kind of woman who turned heads everywhere we went, smart, ambitious, and effortlessly beautiful. She was the envy of every man who knew her, and to my quiet pride, she chose me. We met in college, where I fell for her charm and contagious laughter. After 2 years of dating, I proposed under a starry sky, convinced we were destined for forever. Fast forward to today, and you'd see us as the quintessential suburban family. We live in a spacious colonial-style home in a quiet neighborhood outside of Seattle. We have 2 kids, twins Jessica and Daniel, who are the pride of our lives. At least, that's what I thought. On the surface, my life was flawless. I worked as a software engineer, steadily climbing the corporate ladder, while Anna juggled her career as a freelance graphic designer and the endless demands of raising 2 teenagers. Weekends were filled with soccer games, piano recitals, and family movie nights. Our neighbors adored us, often saying, "You're the perfect family." I loved those words. They validated my hard work and sacrifice to give Anna and the kids everything they needed. But as the years passed, I started to notice cracks in the facade. They weren't glaring, more like hairline fractures in glass. Subtle things, like how Anna seemed to guard her phone more fiercely than ever, or the way she dodged certain questions with a deflection and a smile. I chalked it up to the stress of parenting, but deep down, something didn't feel quite right. Jessica and Daniel were everything to me. As a father, I poured my heart into them. I coached Daniel's little league team when he was younger and helped Jessica perfect her math homework late into the night. Watching them grow up filled me with pride, and their milestones were my milestones. They were smart, talented, and driven, everything a dad could want. But every now and then, a knowing doubt would creep into my mind. It wasn't because I didn't love them, God, I loved them more than life itself, but as they entered their teenage years, their features seemed to shift. Their personalities diverged in ways that didn't quite align with mine or Anna's. Daniel had an athleticism I could never claim, while Jessica's fiery temper reminded me of no one on either side of the family. There were times I'd study their faces and struggle to find myself in their features. I dismissed the thoughts as paranoia or insecurity. Maybe I was just overthinking. Anna and I had our share of fights over the years, what marriage didn't? But lately, our arguments felt sharper, more personal. She accused me of being too distant, of working late too often. I countered that she was too controlling, too focused on appearances. The tension simmered beneath our otherwise perfect lives, an invisible undercurrent that only I seemed to feel. Then came the day that changed everything. It started innocuously enough, a casual remark from a family friend, Greg, during a barbecue. Greg had been laughing about his son's uncanny resemblance to him, a trait his wife jokingly claimed she resented. "But hey, you lucked out too," Greg said, clapping me on the shoulder. "Daniel looks nothing like you, but at least he's got Anna's good genes, right?" It was an offhand comment meant to be playful, but it hit me like a freight train. I laughed along with the group, brushing it off, but my mind began to spiral. I'd always noticed that Daniel didn't quite look like me, and Jessica, while stunningly beautiful, had a sharpness in her features that felt unfamiliar. That night, as I lay in bed beside Anna, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't shake the comment. I told myself it was ridiculous, of course, they were mine. How could they not be? But the doubt was like a splinter in my mind, small but persistent. Anna stirred beside me, her face illuminated by the glow of her phone screen. She was scrolling through social media, her fingers moving quickly over the screen. "You okay?" I asked, my voice softer than I intended. She glanced at me, her expression unreadable. "Yeah, just catching up on work stuff." Work stuff. It was always work stuff. I nodded and rolled over, my back to her, but the unease lingered. The idea of a DNA test first crossed my mind that night. I hated myself for even considering it. What kind of husband questions the paternity of his own children? But the seed had been planted, and over the next few weeks, it grew. I began noticing things I'd ignored before: Anna's evasiveness, her defensiveness when I asked simple questions about her day. She'd always been an independent woman, but now I wondered if her independence was a shield. And then there were the kids, Daniel's obsession with soccer, his lightning-fast reflexes, traits that didn't come from me. Jessica's piercing green eyes, a color that didn't exist in either of our family trees. I convinced myself I was overthinking, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Looking back, that was the moment my perfect world began to crumble. I just didn't know it yet. The idea of a DNA test burrowed into my brain like a parasite, feeding on my insecurities and refusing to let go. Days turned into weeks, and the weight of my suspicions grew heavier with each passing moment. I couldn't discuss it with anyone, not Anna, not a friend, not even a stranger who would understand. I was the poster child for a devoted husband and father. Admitting doubt about my children's paternity would make me look like a paranoid lunatic, or worse, a failure as a man. Still, the doubts refused to leave me. Every time I saw Daniel dart across the soccer field, or watched Jessica brush back her thick hair, so similar to Anna's, yet with an undertone of something foreign, I couldn't help but wonder. The fear became suffocating, and I realized the only way to silence it was to get an answer. I convinced myself it wasn't betrayal. It wasn't distrust of Anna. It was just curiosity, a precaution I needed for closure so I could move on and keep loving my family without this poison gnawing at my mind. That's what I told myself as I ordered a home DNA test kit online. It arrived a few days later in a nondescript package, as unassuming as a box of stationery. The process was simple enough. I needed saliva samples from the kids and my own for comparison. But how could I collect theirs without raising suspicion? I couldn't exactly hand them the swabs and say, "Hey, let's do this fun little experiment." No, it had to be discreet. The opportunity presented itself during breakfast one weekend. Anna had stepped out to run errands, and Jessica and Daniel were sitting at the table, engrossed in their phones as they mindlessly ate bowls of cereal. I casually grabbed their used spoons and napkins, slipping them into resealable plastic bags when they weren't looking. My heart raced as I did it, a mixture of guilt and adrenaline fueling my actions. Later that night, when everyone was asleep, I added my sample to the collection. I packed everything neatly into the test kit, sealed the envelope, and drove to a nearby drop-off box under the cover of darkness. I felt like a criminal sneaking around my own family, but I told myself it was worth it. Soon, the truth would set me free. The wait for the results was excruciating. Each day felt like an eternity, and every interaction with Anna and the kids carried a strange weight. Anna didn't seem to notice my unease. She was busy planning a family outing for the twins' upcoming birthday, bubbling with enthusiasm about cake designs and gift ideas. Watching her made my chest tighten. If my suspicions were wrong, I'd feel like the worst husband on earth for doubting her. But if they were right, I pushed the thought away. Finally, the email arrived. "Your results are ready," the subject line read. My hands trembled as I clicked the link. The world around me seemed to blur as I entered my login details. The glow of the screen illuminated my face in the dim room. And then I saw it. Paternity results, negative. Not for one child, for both. The word stared back at me, mocking the life I'd built, 16 years of love, trust, and sacrifice. All a lie. My chest felt like it had been cracked open, my heart exposed and raw. I read the results over and over, hoping they would change, but they didn't. The twins were not mine. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I wanted to scream, to throw the computer across the room, to wake Anna and demand answers. But I didn't. Instead, I closed the laptop, stood up, and paced the living room like a caged animal. The twins weren't mine, that meant Anna had cheated. Not once, but twice. It wasn't a mistake or a lapse in judgment. It was deliberate. And for 16 years, she had let me believe a lie. She had looked me in the eyes every day and pretended nothing was wrong. I felt sick to my stomach. Memories of our life together flooded my mind, our wedding, the birth of the twins, family vacations, lazy Sunday mornings. They were all tainted now, twisted into something ugly. I devoted my entire adult life to Anna and the kids. And for what? To be a placeholder? A fool? My first instinct was to confront Anna immediately, to wake her up and watch the blood drain from her face as I revealed what I knew. But something stopped me. If I confronted her now, she'd have the upper hand. She'd cry, apologize, spin her story, and I'd be too blinded by emotion to think clearly. No. I needed to be smarter. I sat back down and began to think. The woman I loved had betrayed me in the most unforgivable way. She had taken away my right to the truth, to my own legacy. And as I sat there, staring at the darkness outside, a new emotion began to take hold. Not sadness. Not heartbreak. Rage. She needed to pay for what she'd done. She needed to feel the same devastation I felt, the same emptiness. But I wouldn't confront her, not yet. First, I would plan. And when the time came, she wouldn't see it coming. The night after I saw the DNA results, I barely slept. My mind was a swirling storm of rage, betrayal, and a desperate need for answers. I lay awake beside Anna, listening to her steady breathing, imagining the moment I would confront her. What would she say? Would she deny it? Cry? Beg for forgiveness? The thought made my blood boil. Morning came, and I went about the routine like a man on autopilot. I made coffee, kissed Jessica on the forehead as she grabbed her backpack, and gave Daniel a high five before he headed out to catch the bus. I was a ghost, going through the motions, waiting for the right moment to make my move. That moment came later that evening. Anna was sitting at the dining table, her laptop open as she worked on a graphic design project. The glow from the screen lit up her face, and for a moment, I felt the faintest pang of the love I used to have for her. Then I remembered the DNA results, and that love turned to ash. Anna, I said, my voice calm but firm. She looked up, startled. What's up? You look serious. I pulled out the printed DNA results and placed them on the table in front of her. She frowned, confused, and picked up the paper. As she read, her face drained of color. Her hands began to tremble, and she looked up at me with wide, panicked eyes. What? What is this? She stammered. You tell me, I said, folding my arms across my chest. 16 years, Anna. 16 years. And you've been lying to me. So go ahead, tell me whose kids they are. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Tears welled up in her eyes, but I wasn't moved, not this time. She wasn't the victim here. I was. Please let me explain, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Explain? I barked out a bitter laugh. What's there to explain? The DNA test says it all. They're not mine. Anna, you had an affair. Or did you forget? She sobbed, burying her face in her hands. I didn't mean for it to happen, she cried. It was a mistake. A stupid, horrible mistake. A mistake? I leaned forward, my voice cold. A mistake is spilling coffee on the carpet, Anna. What you did was calculated. You slept with someone else, got pregnant, and passed those kids off as mine. And you let me raise them for 16 years. That's not a mistake. That's evil. Her sobs grew louder, but I wasn't done. Who is he? The father? Tell me his name. She hesitated, and for a moment, I thought she wouldn't answer. But then she whispered, it was someone I worked with. His name is Mark. He left the company years ago. I haven't seen him since. Mark? I repeated the name, committing it to memory. It was a name that would haunt her soon enough. And you never thought to tell me? Never thought I deserved to know the truth? I was scared, she said, wiping her tears. I didn't know how to tell you. And then, when the twins were born. You loved them so much. I couldn't destroy that. I couldn't destroy us. You destroyed us the moment you slept with him, I snapped. The moment you decided to lie to me every single day for 16 years. Anna reached out to touch my hand, but I pulled away, like her touch burned. Please don't do this, she begged. I love you. We can get through this. Get through this? I stood up, towering over her. You think we can just sweep this under the rug and pretend it didn't happen? That's not how this works, Anna. Her sobs turned into desperate gasps. What about the kids? She pleaded. They need you. You're their father, DNA or not. That statement hit me like a punch to the gut. I loved Jessica and Daniel more than anything, but the betrayal was too much to bear. How could I keep living this lie? How could I look them in the eyes knowing they weren't mine? I need time, I said finally, my voice hollow. I need to think. Anna nodded, her tears falling freely. Take all the time you need. She whispered, just please don't leave us. I didn't respond. I grabbed my keys and walked out the door, slamming it behind me. I drove aimlessly through the city, my mind racing. Her tears had stirred something in me, a flicker of pity, maybe, but it wasn't enough to dull the pain of her betrayal. For 16 years, Anna had taken away my right to the truth, my right to make my own choices. She had stolen my life and rewritten it to suit her needs. As I drove, a cold, calculated plan began to form in my mind. I wouldn't just leave her, I would destroy her. Anna needed to feel the weight of her choices, to understand the depth of the pain she'd caused. And by the time I was finished, she'd have nothing left, no money, no security, no sense of control, just the same emptiness I felt now. This wasn't just revenge, it was justice. The next few days were a blur of suppressed emotions and calculated planning. I stayed under the same roof as Anna and the kids, but I was a ghost, silent, detached, watching their every move as I prepared for my own. Anna tried to reach out, apologizing over and over, but her words meant nothing to me now. She was trying to patch together a ship that had already sunk. While Anna begged for forgiveness, I was methodically dismantling the life we had built together. Revenge wasn't just a concept anymore, it was my mission. She had taken away my trust, my identity, my family. Now, I would take everything she held dear. Anna didn't know it, but every penny in our shared accounts was under my control. Early in our marriage, she trusted me to handle the finances while she focused on her graphic design work. That trust, ironically, became my weapon. Late one night, while Anna slept upstairs, I logged into our bank accounts. I transferred every last dollar, savings, checking, even the emergency fund, into a private account she didn't know existed. I also canceled the credit cards in her name and locked her out of the joint ones. By morning, the accounts would show a balance of zero, and the only funds left would be in her personal account, which I knew was meager at best. Once the financial groundwork was laid, I began drafting a letter. It was short, cold, and devastating. Anna, you've lied to me for 16 years, and I can't forgive you. You stole my life and let me live a lie. As of now, I'm gone. Don't try to find me. Don't contact me. This is what you deserve. The kids aren't mine, but I hope you'll have the decency to tell them the truth someday. They deserve to know who their real father is, assuming even you know. I've left you with nothing, just as you've left me. Consider it justice. Goodbye, Tom. I printed the letter and left it on the dining room table where Anna would find it the next morning. The thought of her reading those words, of her world crumbling around her, gave me a grim sense of satisfaction. It wasn't enough to erase the pain she'd caused me, but it was a start. Disappearing wasn't as hard as people think. I'd spent years reading stories about men who started new lives from scratch, and I was ready to join their ranks. I withdrew cash in small increments over the course of several days, ensuring I had enough to sustain me for a while. I also rented a small storage unit, where I stashed a few essentials, clothes, a prepaid phone, and a fake ID I'd purchased online months ago. At the time, I'd bought it as a precaution for another reason. Now, it was my lifeline. On the night of my departure, I waited until the house was silent. Anna was in bed, and the kids' doors were closed. I stood in the living room for a moment, taking it all in, the family photos on the walls, the laughter that used to echo through these halls. This house had once been my sanctuary, but now it was a monument to betrayal. I slipped out the front door, carrying nothing but a duffel bag. I didn't look back. I didn't need to be there to imagine Anna's reaction when she found the letter. She would stumble out of bed, expecting another day of pretending everything was fine. She'd noticed the missing money first, maybe when she tried to pay for breakfast or gas. Panic would set in as she realized the gravity of the situation. And then she'd find the letter. I pictured her standing in the dining room, holding the paper in trembling hands, her face pale, her chest heaving with sobs. The kids would wake up to her cries, rushing downstairs to find their mother in pieces. She tried to explain, but what could she say? How do you tell your children the man they've called dad their entire lives isn't actually their father? I checked into a motel under my new identity, using cash to avoid leaving a trail. Over the next few days, I watched from the shadows as Anna's life began to unravel. She tried to call me, of course, but my number was disconnected. I ignored her emails and social media messages. As far as she was concerned, I had vanished into thin air. The kids, Jessica and Daniel, were the only ones I felt guilty about. They were innocent in all this, caught in the crossfire of Anna's lies. But I couldn't stay, not after what I'd learned. Maybe one day, when they were old enough, I'd reach out and tell them the truth. But for now, I needed to let them go. Anna's pleas became more desperate over time. She reached out to friends, family, even the police, claiming I was missing. I knew they'd never find me. I'd been careful. She was left to face the consequences of her actions alone. Through a burner phone, I occasionally monitored Anna's public social media accounts. Her cheerful posts about family outings and birthday celebrations had stopped entirely. Instead, she shared cryptic messages about heartbreak and loss, clearly fishing for sympathy from her friends. She didn't mention the DNA test, of course, that was her dirty little secret, but I knew it was eating her alive. Every smiling photo of the twins was a reminder of her betrayal, of the lie she had built and watched crumble. And this was only the beginning. Anna's downfall wasn't immediate. It crept in slowly, like a storm on the horizon. For the first week after I vanished, she kept up appearances, clinging to the hope that I'd come back. She sent me countless emails and texts, though she knew I couldn't see them. Her social media posts became increasingly desperate, littered with vague comments about needing space to heal and asking for prayers. But I knew the truth. She wasn't seeking healing. She was drowning in chaos. The first significant crack appeared when the mortgage payment bounced. Anna had never handled our finances. She didn't even know the login details for the bank accounts. She must have assumed there would be enough money left to cover her expenses, but I had drained everything, leaving her with nothing but her own income, which was barely enough to keep the lights on. Through the burner phone, I monitored our joint email account, which I hadn't yet deactivated. The notifications started rolling in, overdue bills, declined transactions, and warnings from creditors. Her credit score plummeted. Within weeks, she tried calling the bank, but I'd already closed the joint accounts. She was trapped. Anna began selling off anything of value, her designer handbags, a high-end coffee maker she adored, even the diamond earrings I'd given her for our 10th anniversary. The irony wasn't lost on me. She was pawning off the remnants of the life I'd built for her. The twins were the next domino to fall. Jessica and Daniel weren't oblivious. They noticed my absence and Anna's growing distress. At first, she must have fed them some story, probably that I'd left to think or needed time. But teenagers are smarter than we give them credit for, and it wasn't long before they started asking hard questions. One night, about 3 weeks after I'd left, Anna made the mistake of venting on social media. In a now-deleted post, she wrote something cryptic about making mistakes and facing the consequences of past actions. It didn't take long for Jessica to confront her. I wasn't there, but I heard about the fallout from a mutual friend who pieced together the story through the grapevine. Jessica and Daniel demanded answers, and Anna had no choice but to come clean. She admitted that I wasn't their biological father, that she'd had an affair before they were born. Jessica, always the more fiery of the two, exploded. She stormed out of the house and refused to speak to Anna for days. Daniel was quieter, but his silence was worse. He withdrew completely, shutting himself in his room and ignoring Anna's attempts to console him. The damage was done. Anna's perfect family was fracturing before her eyes, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Word spread quickly in our small suburban community. Anna's friends, the ones who used to gush about her picture-perfect life, started distancing themselves. People whispered behind her back at the grocery store and gave her pitying looks at school functions. She tried to salvage her reputation, but the truth had a way of seeping out. Eventually, someone must have told the kids at school, because Jess came home in tears one day, humiliated by the whispers and rumors. Anna's betrayal had become public knowledge, and the shame was suffocating her. I watched all of this from afar, through the burner phone and occasional updates from old contacts. I saw how Anna's life was unraveling. It wasn't enough to make me feel whole, but it gave me a grim satisfaction. She had stolen 16 years from me, and now she was paying the price. But I wasn't done yet. I'd spent years working hard to give Anna and the kids a good life, and she'd thrown it away for a fleeting affair. Now, I would take back the things that truly mattered to her. The house had been in my name before we married, and I'd never added Anna to the deed. It was a fact she probably hadn't even thought about it until the eviction notice arrived. I had no plans to sell the house, but I wanted her out of it. She didn't deserve to live in the home I had built. Eviction wasn't immediate, of course. I went through the proper legal channels, filing the necessary paperwork and making sure everything was airtight. When Anna received the formal notice, she tried to fight it, but without money or legal representation, her efforts were futile. Watching her scramble to find a place to live brought me no joy, but it felt like justice. The house had been my sanctuary, and she had tainted it with her lies. Now, it was mine again. Finding Mark, the biological father of the twins, wasn't hard. A quick search on LinkedIn and social media led me straight to him. He was living in another state now, happily married with a new family. I debated whether to contact him. On one hand, he was as complicit as Anna, a willing participant in the lie that had destroyed my life. On the other hand, I knew his wife deserved the truth, just as I had. After much deliberation, I sent her an anonymous email with the details of Mark's affair with Anna and the fact that he had 2 children he had never acknowledged. I never heard back, but I didn't need to. Within days, Mark's social media accounts went dark, and mutual friends mentioned he was going through personal issues as his actions were finally catching up to everyone involved. Anna's life was in shambles now, financially, emotionally, and socially. Her perfect world had collapsed, leaving her with nothing but the consequences of her betrayal. Meanwhile, I was finally free, starting over in a new city with a new identity. It wasn't a happy ending, but it was the ending Anna had earned. Thank you for watching till the end. If you enjoyed the story, make sure to hit the like button. It only takes a second, but it means the world to us. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss our upcoming videos. Something brand new is dropping tomorrow, and hit the notification bell to be among the first to see it. See you in the next video. Goodbye.